Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the weekly Dragon Ball news recap. We have a ton of stuff to go over in today's video. Dragon Ball Super's remake finally seemingly has its release date out there. Also, some Dragon Ball Xenoverse 2 information that is sure to have a lot of your heads turning. Very interesting stuff with regards to when we will be seeing it again. A brand new look at the game, things like that. And also, Gekishin Squadra leaks, or data mines, however you want to call it. They are out there. They're interesting and hint at something a bit interesting in its future. We'll also be talking about the financial report, which is reported by Vinix's. Very interesting stuff with regards to Dragon Ball's earnings and how they could be better, but they're not necessarily bad. And then also some Dragon Ball Daima information courtesy of Anime AJ, and an update on the Blu-ray that Crunchyroll has delayed for quite a long time. We might be seeing that now, finally. Let's get into it. So first of all, as I said, we have a look at the Dragon Ball Super Beerus release date. Obviously, there are two figures for Beerus and Whis. Looks like they're coming out in October, so that gives us our first hint, of course, that this is whenever it will be airing. Now, there have been previous reports of this, but I have not been too confident in that rumor, so I wasn't really positive about actually titling a video or putting in the thumbnail release date. But now we have a situation where there's just too many things lining up to where it makes sense that this would be October. And that's when Dragon Ball Daima released as well, and that was also a 20-episode anime. Now, if you're unfamiliar with why I'm calling this a 20-episode anime, it's because according to reports, leaks, however you want to say it, we've actually got a good idea that the Dragon Ball Super Beerus remake, the Golden Frieza remake, and the Universe 6 versus Universe 7 remake may be around 20 episodes packaged together. And then there's the report that the whole crew went from the remake to the moral arc after those 20 episodes. So this, of course, makes sense. Dragon Ball Daima was 20 episodes, it released in October. The Dragon Ball Super remake, so far from what we know, is 20 episodes, or roughly around there, and it should be released in October, according to this information. And then Vinixis went ahead and said, first official Dragon Ball Super Beerus figures of Beerus and Whis coming in October. This basically confirms at 99% that the series will drop in October. So it's not 100% certain, but it's one of those situations where things are lining up too well for this to be the case. And if it's not October, then when is it? Because we also have the Golden Frieza arc coming up after this, and the trailer also said fall 2026 for that. So if that's the case, one is obviously right to assume, hey, October just makes all the sense in the world, right? So in case you're here for the figures, here they are. But yeah, I'm excited for the Dragon Ball Super remake, if I'm being honest. I'm interested to see if this will be a good substitution, you could say, for the Dragon Ball Super anime. And hopefully we get the rest of it sooner than later. Next up, let's go over the Gekishin Squadra roadmap before getting into the leaks. Season 5 starts 5/13. Here are 3 new characters. Frieza 4th Form, Son Goku Youth, Bulma Youth. There will also be new skins and emotes added. And let's take a look here. We got the release dates. So Frieza, this is obviously stuff that's already happened. Then the 26th, we'll get Goku and some new emotes. The 9th, we'll get new skins. And then the 16th, we'll get Bulma, skins for Bulma and emotes for Bulma. And then, interestingly enough, a lot of people were talking about this, and a lot of people were actually very upset about this. The Xenoverse 2 collaboration is coming way later than all the other games. Then you have your events down here, Mr. Satan's Zenny Jamboree, Bulma's Capsule Bonanza, and Mr. Satan's Zenny Jamboree once again. So, very interesting roadmap. Obviously, this is what you would expect. Now, in case you missed it, I'm a big fan of OG Dragon Ball. I think if you're a fan of Dragon Ball, you should be a fan of OG Dragon Ball because it is literally Dragon Ball. So I was very excited about the announcements of Kid Goku and Bulma. I wish Frieza was also an OG Dragon Ball character like Demon King Piccolo or somebody like that. I think that could have been great to have a full Dragon Ball themed season, but I understand that they didn't want to go too deep on Dragon Ball, I guess. So this looks like a pretty stable roadmap, but it looks like we have our hint at maybe what's coming up in the next season, or maybe this is just something fun to be doing it, right? So this person is NoxCS. They have been doing a lot of data mining for Dragon Ball Gekishin Squadra, and it looks like Ice Shinron is going to be a boss in Dragon Ball Gekishin Squadra. Now, the interesting thing about this is they also theorize that this is hinting at a Dragon Ball GT themed season. That would be interesting, but I don't necessarily think a boss is hinting at what this season is going to be, because if you'll remember, we did have Great Ape Gohan or Goku. I think it was, who was the Great Ape supposed to represent in Gekishin Squadra? I think it was Gohan, might have been Goku. Point is, we also had Jackie Chun show up, and there were no OG Dragon Ball characters whenever he showed up either. We're just now getting OG Dragon Ball characters. So it's an interesting situation where I don't imagine the bosses are hinting at what's coming up. Maybe it's hinting at what they're working on, what's coming up next season after they do the Ice Shinron boss. But I don't think it's something we should look too far into. Jackie Chun, I just looked into it, was a Season 3 boss, right? He was added in Season 3. And then OG Dragon Ball came around in Season 5. So maybe you could say a couple seasons after this, something along those lines. But it is interesting. I'm not going to play the audio just in case, just to be safe, and I won't show the model that they also data mined. But this could be a hint at what's to come, so I figured I would include it just in case. But still, it's still a cool leak that Ice Shinron is coming in the form of a boss to Gekishin Squadra at least. Alright, so for this next segment, we are going to be taking a look at President Rose's interview, podcast, you could say, with Rhymestyle. Rhymestyle is, of course, a big Dragon Ball content creator who has, I don't want to say links to Bandai Namco, because it's not like he is like tied in with Bandai Namco and he's got sources on the inside. I think it's more of a situation where he works with them often to an extent and has some people on the inside that let him know when things are coming up. So we're just going to let this play out, listen to what he has to say, listen to what President Rose has to say, and then we will go from there. So let's just listen to what they have to say.
Commented under his post.
Hey,
said,
so I did get a small heads up for something. You're gonna see something about the game a lot sooner than you think. It's not going to be anything crazy like with sparking, because when they start doing sparking, they just outright let people play the game like 2 months later.
Right.
It's not gonna be anything like that, but we're gonna see that game a lot sooner than people think.
Okay, so do you talking about like the release or just like another trailer?
I don't know yet.
Okay,
again,
so you just got like
like one thing I want to point out is like if I ever get a heads up of shit, and I know this fucking sounds crazy because sometimes it just sounds like I just know shit. If I ever get a heads up, my heads up will always be like, hey, just so you know, X, Y, and Z will be at this event or at this thing, just so you know. So plan to be there if you want to be there. Like that's the heads up that I'll get.
Okay.
And I did get a heads up for something that's coming up soon, and it's not anything crazy. It's not like I'm leaking anything here.
Okay.
But we are gonna see something with it. I don't know how much. It might even be nothing. It might be one of those things where they're gonna show like fucking like a character just moving, and that's it.
Okay. All right, this is my last question about that, and I'm gonna move on. Is it before Summer Game Fest, or you think it's at Summer Game Fest?
Which one's Summer Game Fest?
June. Summer Game Fest is June, something like the big game thing, bro.
Probably we'll probably see it at that.
Appreciate it.
That's when they revealed Spark. Yeah, that's when they showed sparking.
Okay.
I mean, I was so mad, bro. I wasn't.
So there you have it. It does seem like we're going to be getting a new look at Xenoverse 3 a lot sooner than most people were thinking. Of course, with its release date being 2027, a lot of people were thinking we would not be seeing this game for quite a while, which honestly wouldn't be too surprising considering we know this game has been in development for a long time. But it looks like they're going to have a pretty strong marketing cycle leading up to this game. They did something very similar with Sparking Zero. When Sparking Zero was coming out, it seemed like we were getting a trailer at least once a month, right? That was a pretty cool marketing cycle, pretty nice hype cycle, I guess you could say, hype season. It was pretty fun, and it looks like we're in for the same thing with Xenoverse 3. And as they were saying, it seems like Summer Game Fest is going to be where we see this game. Now, I, like all of you, or maybe most of you, I don't want to speak for everybody, but it seems like most people in the Dragon Ball community are pretty excited for this. So what could we see at Summer Game Fest? Maybe an overview trailer, maybe they'll give us some more information, maybe our first look at gameplay, because we got some gameplay teases in this initial animation trailer, I guess you could say animated trailer, because it's not the official first reveal, because we already got that at the big event previously. So this was for Dragon Ball Games Battle Hour, the previous event at the Genki Damatsuri. It was just a nice quick glance at what's to come, right? Just a pure animation of CGI. This was 2D animation with some video game in-game engine footage, you could say. I think you could also say it was a cut scene, but it did say it was in-game footage at the end of this trailer, so who knows at this point what we are going to see at Summer Game Fest, but I would assume it's got to be gameplay at this rate, right? At this point, it has to be gameplay, actual game footage running around in the city, maybe doing a features overview, or maybe that's something they would save closer to release and they would just tease us a little bit with that. So some of the stuff you've seen in this trailer, like flying around the city, for example, we could see that at the big Summer Game Fest trailer, or it could be nothing, like Rhyme Style was alluding to. You could just see them like on screen walking around the city real quick, and then boom, Xenoverse 3. But who knows at this rate? But it is still nice to know that we will not be having to wait too long before we see another look at Xenoverse 3. So that is at least something. Like I said, also in the news this week, we have a look at the financial report earnings. So this is coming from Bandai Namco fiscal year 2026 for March 31st, 2025 through March 31st, 2026. Looks like it's a little not good, I guess you could say, for Dragon Ball, but not that bad, honestly. So Mobile Suit Gundam coming out on top. From what I understand, like the whole Gundam scene is pretty profitable, so that makes sense. One Piece is at 139 billion, and then Dragon Ball is at 138 billion. So this is for like all the figures and video games, I believe, because it's Bandai Namco. So all the figures, video games, things like that, which is very interesting. So yeah, you can see sales of IP and sales of IPs, toys, and hobby business. Then it looks like Dragon Ball 29.9, One Piece 94.2. So yeah, here's how the numbers break down. First half year 13.6, One Piece 48.2, Dragon Ball for the full year of, what is that, 29.4, with One Piece 95.1. Right, I think I'm reading this right. And then you have some further numbers here. And then sales of IP group wide, Dragon Ball 190.6, One Piece 139.5. That's for the full year 2025. And then full year 2026, looks like One Piece is at 139.3 and Dragon Ball is at 138.0. So that's interesting. So we're essentially at a point, and I believe the sales of IP, so when you say group wide, I think that's probably actually grouping in the toys and hobby business now that I'm looking at it. Anyway, point is, the interesting thing is that this is for a year where we didn't have any Dragon Ball anime, right? Because Dragon Ball Daima was not 2026. And it was also kind of 2025 because we were still riding the hype wave and it was still exciting. And so I guess that also explains Dragon Ball's strong performance in 2025 as compared to 2026. But with all this new stuff coming out for Dragon Ball Super, the remake, the Mortal Arc, everything like that, I think we're going to be looking at a much more stronger Dragon Ball in that year, maybe 2027 especially. So we'll probably see in 2027 Dragon Ball beating One Piece once again. But this is still fun for One Piece fans to see. And I think One Piece is also on the rise. I have seen more people excited for One Piece. It's been gaining in popularity, so that is something that's true. Then as far as Toei Animation's report, One Piece is beating Dragon Ball. So One Piece is at 27.843 million, and then Dragon Ball is at 20.799 million yen. So this is for domestic licensing, overseas film, and overseas licensing. So all the anime stuff and all that stuff does make sense. Like I said, Dragon Ball is super popular. But again, I think what's interesting is that people need to remember One Piece is a much longer show. So maybe people will be dropping money on One Piece more because there's simply more of it to purchase. That's a possibility. But there's also the argument that Dragon Ball is so popular that that's its natural advantage it has over One Piece. So again, this is all coming from Vinixis. Very interesting stuff. And like I said, Dragon Ball Daima's Blu-ray finally has its release set for August 11th, 2026 in North America. If you've seen any Dragon Ball Daima Blu-rays on Walmart or anything like that, they're scams. Do not buy those. Just wait for this. This is the official product. Anyways, guys, that will be it for this video. A very interesting week and a very exciting week. Dragon Ball does seem like it's on the rise and it's finally back. Let's hope we have a Dragon Ball Super manga update sooner rather than later. That will be it for this video. If you enjoyed, please leave a like, comment down below, and subscribe for more Dragon Ball news and commentary, and I will catch you in the next one. Peace off.